because it's very easy to sit around and kind of think either that you've got the greatest idea ever, or sit around and think, the business is lousy, but actually the only thing that matters is what the market says.
This is The Entrepreneur Way with Neil Ball. Unlocking the secrets of successful entrepreneurs 7 days a week. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Twitter at Neil D. Ball. Napoleon Hill said the power of the mastermind is the driving force. To discover how you can unlock the potential in your business using the power of a mastermind, go to mastermindunlimited.com. And now, here is your host, Neil Ball.
Hello everybody, it's Neil Ball here. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Entrepreneur Way. The Entrepreneur Way is about the entrepreneur's journey, the vision, the mindset, the commitment, the sacrifice, failures and successes. I'm so excited to bring you our special guest today, Callum Laing. But before I introduce you to him, I have a little quote for you. Jonathan Colesall said, "The answers I remember the longest are the ones that answered the questions that I didn't think of asking." The Entrepreneur Way asks the questions so we all get the insight, inspiration and ideas to apply in our businesses. Callum, welcome to the show. Are you ready to share your version of the Entrepreneur Way with us?
I certainly am.
Great. Callum Laing is a business owner and investor who lives in Singapore. Callum, can you provide us with some more insight into your business and personal life to allow us to get to know more about what you do and who you are?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually a Kiwi, so I was born in New Zealand, but I grew up in the UK, in Cambridge, and then moved out to Asia about 14 years ago. And I've been pretty much building, buying and selling businesses ever since. Spent a lot of time trying to learn the entrepreneurship game and trying to learn how to create enough value for customers to convince them to part with their hard-earned cash. And today I'm a director of a number of businesses. So one of the companies that I launched into Asia is called Become a Key Person of Influence, which has been very successful in the UK, US, Australia, and I've launched it here in Singapore. So we have a community of business owners and executives that are looking to raise their profile beyond their business and into the industry. And I'm also a partner in a private equity company that works with business owners to help them get better valuations for their business. So what that means a lot of times is helping them to take their businesses public. So I kind of on the investor side now of entrepreneurship, which is a fun place to be.
Mm-hmm. And what do you enjoy most about what you do, Callum?
I love working with people that get stuff done. That's, I guess, what really energizes me. My days are spent in meetings with entrepreneurs, business owners that have, they're creating stuff, they're making jobs, they're serving clients, they're serving shareholders. It's an inspiring environment, and I get lucky enough to meet lots of cool people that have built lots of cool businesses. The more time I spend in that, the more fun I have.
Mm-hmm. And what is it that drives you?
I think I've always been pretty driven. As a kid, I always had little business ventures. I think the first one was kind of washing cars, and then I had homemade ice cream business in Cambridge where I was selling to pubs and restaurants, and just kept kind of growing from then. I sort of have a geeky fascination with business, and love finding out about new business models that are working, and understanding about business cultures and what works in some countries that doesn't work in other countries, and that sort of stuff all fascinates me. So I guess the primary driver is again getting a chance to. That's what I love doing. Get a chance to be surrounded by other people that also love that, and get to wax lyrical about business opportunities.
Mm-hmm. And how do you relax when you're not working in your business?
Mainly through sport and exercise. I've obviously you can't be an entrepreneur without going through some pretty stressful times, and I've had my fair share of pretty dark moments. And one of the things that I learned was that often as an entrepreneur, when you're going through those periods, it's very likely that you kind of get stuck in an endless loop of asking yourself the same questions and getting the same answers, and it's very difficult to switch off from that. I discovered that if I play competitive sports, at least while I'm in that moment, then my mind's completely occupied with the sport. So I play a lot of football, but I also kind of just go to the gym and run and anything really that's just keeps my mind off thinking about business, which is useful sometimes.
And do you have any entrepreneurial role models?
Yeah, I have lots, and I tend to try and find ways to work with the people that I admire the most. So I think one of the foremost thinkers in entrepreneurship at the moment is based in the UK, is a guy called Daniel Priestley. So Daniel actually wrote the book Become a Key Person of Influence. He then wrote Entrepreneur Revolution and a third book, Oversubscribed. So I think he's incredibly switched on to what's happening in the entrepreneurship world at the moment. So I reached out to him and now work with him and have launched his stuff here in Asia. And then on the kind of at the other end of the scale, Jeremy Harbour is, I think he's probably the number one thinker in terms of small business mergers and acquisitions space. Very, very, very innovative guy. And so, yeah, reached out to him and ultimately became a partner in his private equity company. So, where I see people doing cool stuff, I that like to try and figure out how I can create value for them and ultimately end up working with them.
Callum, can we talk about the time before you were an entrepreneur? Although it might be difficult if you started pretty young by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
What difficulties did you have to overcome when you started your business?
Just complete incompetence. My own incompetence was the hardest thing I had to overcome. I've always sort of made a point of trying to find people that are smarter than me and aligning myself with them so I can learn with them. But that hasn't stopped me making a huge amount of mistakes along the way. Just as with any entrepreneur, you need to you get your experience from going through those learning cycles. And so when I was starting out, I obviously had a few of those. Somebody recently said to me that you know you're most about entrepreneurship the day you start your business. Every day since then, you realize how little you do know. I think that was probably right. I think so. While I'd had a lot of kind of small businesses on the side as I was growing up, my first grown-up business was a recruitment company that I built out of Amsterdam. We had offices in Amsterdam, Dublin, and London, that was very successful. I think I was 23, 24 at the time. And I thought that success was due to my innate talent and good looks. But actually we were serving telco companies in the height of the dot-com boom. And so we were successful despite my incompetence. And when the dot-com boom collapsed, it turned out I wasn't nearly as clever as I thought I was. So that was a nice bit of humility served up to me at a young age. But yeah, it's all good. It's all part of the journey.
Yeah, I think having a bit of success without having had failure does have that effect on you quite often, doesn't it? You think you can touch anything and turn it to a success then, and sometimes
it does. It's an interesting. It was an interesting lesson about putting yourself in an environment where success is happening. So, when you're in something like the dot-com boom. For those that can remember, back in sort of 97, 98, 99, then trying to find yourself in a tech space was a great place to be. And part of the reason why I moved out to Asia was you start looking at the macro trends, and everything was pointing to Asia. And I made a decision 14 years ago that this was a good place to be. Haven't looked back since.
Good. And did you have any doubts that delayed you starting your business?
No, not really, because I pretty much started pretty early on. So I've certainly had doubts about starting new businesses along the way. I've also started new businesses when I probably should have delayed. So probably had a little bit of overconfidence. But yeah, no, I kind of liked the idea of starting my own thing, and naively thought that if I started my own thing, I'd be in control, which anyone who actually owns a business will tell you don't have nearly as much control as you think you have when you're an employee.
Yeah. And what mistakes did you make that slowed your journey?
So many. It's just the list is long. Look, I guess you make different mistakes as you go along. I've made mistakes when I've tried to do too much myself. I've had mistakes where I've tried to delegate too much. Definitely made mistakes about some of the people I've hired. I've made mistakes about some of the people I've fired. I've made mistakes about which niche to go into or which clients to target. Yeah, the list is long and illustrious, but I'm still making mistakes today. So it's some you learn from, and some I'm quite a slow learner, so I normally have to make the same mistake a few times before I get the lesson.
And what are some of the things that you did before you started your business that would be helpful tips to some of the listeners who haven't yet taken the first step on the entrepreneur way?
So I have a slightly different take on it. There's lots and lots of media out there suggesting that entrepreneurs are the new rock stars, and you should follow your passion and get out of your just over broke and all of that sort of stuff. And I tend to have a different view on it. Most of the successful people I know that have managed to transition from employee to entrepreneur started something on the side and managed to build it into a successful business before they left the safety of their current role. And what I've noticed about the people that do that is, they've got more certainty about them because they know that they've got their own salary coming in every month, so they don't have that kind of desperate look in their eyes that many entrepreneurs have when they're trying to sell something. The other thing is, because they can't solve all the problems themselves because they've got a day job, it tends to make them much more effective at hiring people and giving them responsibility. So I see a lot of people that kind of follow this advice of follow your passion, and they quit their jobs and they jump out and they try and start something new, and Unfortunately, more often than not, you see people that end up passionately hating whatever it was that they were passionate about before, because it's now driven them into a place where they're not making the money they were. They're now in charge of HR, IT, marketing, sales, making coffee, and actually, I think for a lot of people, what they're looking for is creative freedom. And they think if they start a business that they will get that creative freedom. And actually, I think if you focus more on understanding how you create value in the world, then you can, it's quite interesting. If you look, there's a number of top entrepreneurs have gone back to work as employees in companies. And part of the reason is that entrepreneurship at its heart is about taking resources and creating something bigger, something better. And companies often have resources that most entrepreneurs could only dream about. So I think there's, I think there's a bit of a danger with the kind of leaping into that stuff. If you can start something up on the side, which is so much easier to do now than it ever was. It's never been cheaper and easier to start a little side project on your own. So if you can do that while you've still got the safety of a monthly salary, I would strongly recommend that.
Okay. And can we just talk a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey and move forward a bit here? So can you tell us, do you think culture is important from the beginning in a business?
Yes and no. A culture will happen by default. So in an ideal world, like, you can try and control it, but for most entrepreneurs, when you're at the when you're trying to learn everything that goes with starting a business, oftentimes culture is going to be one of the first things that gets dropped as a deliberate process, but it will happen accidentally anyway. So, yes, it's important. But if you don't get the fundamentals right of being able to generate more revenue than costs, then, just by definition, you can have a great culture and go bust very quickly. Or you can have a lousy culture and be profitable and have a chance to build that culture later. So I think there's a tendency to look at companies with great cultures and say they're successful because they have a great culture, or look at companies with fantastic branding and say they're successful because they've got fantastic branding. But you can also find plenty of examples of companies with horribly toxic cultures that are still successful, or terrible branding that is still successful. But what they've done well is they know how to create value for customers. So it's kind of like, we've all got tales of maybe our electricity provider or our mobile phone provider that, their customer service is horrible, their costs are expensive, but because they have better coverage than the next provider, we stick with them. So I think just in terms of getting your priorities right, understanding how to create value and get more cash coming in than going out is a priority before things like culture.
That's a great answer. Knowing what you know now, is there anything that if you'd known it when you'd started out would have helped you to shortcut the learning curve?
Again, lots of things. I've forgotten most of the things, but I think, one of the things that I always tried to do was to get smart people around me. I think I probably did quite a good job of that. I'm not sure I listened to them as much as I could have done. I think one of a personal I spent a lot of time trying to come up with the next great product or the next great idea. And actually, if I'd spent more time focusing on the people that I wanted to work with, the clients that I wanted to work with, and finding great products for them that, not necessarily products that I'd created, but products that would have created value for them, I could have moved a lot quicker, a lot faster. I think a lot of entrepreneurs do tend to think that they have to come up with something new and unique themselves, when actually you can kind of adapt other people's products, and if it serves your target customers well, then it's probably easier to do that than to try and reinvent the wheel.
And how much does gut feeling influence your decisions in your business?
It used to influence them a lot in the early days. Less so now. In fact, I tend to bet against my gut feelings. So one of the mistakes that I used to make a lot was thinking that my ideas were brilliant. So I would kind of come up with an idea, and then I would find half a dozen people to reinforce that was a brilliant idea. And then I'd invest loads of time and money in creating that product or that business. And then I'd go out and try and sell it to the market. I've become much more disciplined over the years in, if I come up with an idea, I need to generate revenue from the market before I'll invest any time and money into it. I'm also much more disciplined about putting my own money into businesses. I don't do that anymore. If I can't convince somebody else to invest in the business, or if I can't convince customers to forward order, then it doesn't matter how good an idea I think it is. I won't pursue it because the market doesn't agree.
Some wise advice there. Life is made of constant change, whether we like it or not. And some would say the only constant is change. Callum, how do you try to keep up with change?
I quite like change.
Yeah.
One of the attractions of Asia is that there's some huge changes going on. Obviously, sort of in terms of global macro trends, you've got the largest shifting of wealth in the history of the planet from west to east. You've got this massive shift from rural to urban. You've got this huge demographic cliff of the baby boomers about to retire. And then you've got the massive shifts that are happening because of technology. Now, every time you get a shift like that, it causes value differentials. And whenever you have value differentials, that's when entrepreneurs can jump in and create profits. Now, profits don't last because any company that's making big profits attracts tons of competitors. And so eventually it finds its equilibrium. So actually, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, it's much, much easier to make money in fast-changing markets than it is in old industries or traditional markets, because there's a lot less change going on. So I'm a big fan of change, and I try and keep up to date with new technologies and just exploring where those gaps are occurring and what profit opportunities are around them.
Mm-hmm. And what is your favourite book on entrepreneurialism, business, personal development, leadership, or motivation? And can you tell us why you've chosen
it? So I read a lot of books, and generally there's kind of a few that I'll go back to based on different where you are in different cycles of the business or different cycles of product creation. One of the best authors, I think, in terms of business, but it's quite heavy, is a guy called Ivan Fallon out of the UK. One of what I think is one of his best books is Billionaire, which is about the about the life and times of Sir James Goldsmith in the 1980s. And he just gets really good access to behind the scenes on deals. So you hear a lot about takeover deals and stuff, big multi-million takeover deals. It's very difficult if you're on the outside to have any understanding of what's really going on behind the scenes. And somehow this guy, Ivan Fallon, managed to get a lot of the background behind that, which, if you're a business geek like me, is very interesting. Mm-hmm. So that's what I come back to. I also, obviously, Richard Branson's Losing My Virginity is kind of the Bible in terms of it just covers so much ground, and it's also a great one to. It's a great one to read whenever you're going through a bad period, because generally, however bad period you're going through, he went through worse periods. So it's always nice to remind yourself about that. But yeah, I mean, there's some great books out there, and I mentioned a few. Daniel Priestley's put out some. I have my own book coming out in a couple of months called Progressive Partnerships. Mm-hmm. Which is about how to scale your business up through business partnerships and alliances. But I wouldn't position that as one of the great business books of all time, but hopefully your listeners will find it interesting.
Okay, thank you. And everyone, when you have a busy life, listening to audiobooks is a great way to expand your knowledge in the time when you may be doing other things, such as driving or when you are at the gym. We have a special offer for you of a free audiobook of your choosing. To choose your free audiobook, go to www.freeaudiobookoffer.com. As long as you haven't already signed up, then you will qualify. Callum, we're now going to just speculate about a few things here. So can you tell us what one thing you would do with your business if you knew that you could not fail?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't know. With the businesses we've got at the moment, are in quite a good shape, and I guess, I don't know really. It's I've got so used to working on business strategies that assume a high level of failure, which just allows you to protect your downside and move up, that I don't spend too much time thinking about that kind of, if I couldn't fail stuff.
What skill, if you were excellent at it, would help you the most to double your business?
So I spent a lot of time when I was younger working really hard to learn about sales and influence, mm-hmm. and persuasion, and basically in the belief that anything kind of in that communication space that can move someone from where they are to where you want them to be is a powerful skill to learn. I think one of the things I've sort of come to realize later on is that for all that is very valuable, and being able to articulate value is, I think, one of the most important skills. Actually, I think if I had spent more time on focusing on products that people actually want, then you actually have to do a lot less sales. I would much rather have a great product that people want and no sales skills than a terrible product and great sales skills. But fundamentally, I think the better you are able at communicating your value to the world, the faster you're going to progress.
Mm-hmm. And in 5 years from now, if a well-known business publication was publishing an article on your business after talking to your customers and suppliers, what would you like it to say?
Hopefully that that I've managed to help a number of businesses grow, either through helping them. The three areas that I tend to focus on any business owners that I work with are assets, alliances, and acquisitions. So most small businesses tend to have just a small number of assets that they're out there trying to sweat, and most successful businesses have a large number of assets that serve them. Then that's kind of the value within the business, and the way that you leverage that value is through alliances and partnerships. And so, again, sort of the book I've got coming out is about how to use partnerships to grow. And then the bit that I think is the least talked about in entrepreneurship is the exit or the acquisition. And for most business owners, they kind of dismiss acquisition as it's, that's something that's going to happen in 3 years' time when I build a successful business. Yet if you look at successful entrepreneurs, they view acquisition as the quickest way to grow their business is by acquiring other companies. And so I think it's probably the bit that I'm now focused on is helping businesses to grow through acquisition, so no money down deals and debt-free deals. Mm-hmm. But I also think it's the bit that's probably least talked about in the business. There's tons and tons of information out there about how to start up and sales and marketing and systems and processes and how to hustle harder and all of that sort of stuff. But actually, you can double the size of your business in one deal if you understand acquisition. So, mm-hmm. I guess reference to helping business owners having to grow through assets, alliances, and acquisitions. Mm-hmm. Be great.
I think acquisitions is something. There's obviously an art to doing acquisitions because quite a lot of companies do them, and actually they don't benefit from them, do they? That's obviously the downside of it for some companies. Would you concur with that?
Yeah, I think there's a difference between there's lots of high profile mergers that go wrong, and oftentimes I think it's ego driven. So you've got companies that will buy another company because they love that company, and then they insist on putting their logo over the door and pushing down their best practices. Yeah. And so the top staff leave and the top clients leave. That's the kind of very traditional M&A model. I think there's definitely a trend towards acquiring companies and letting them continue to run as is. You look at some of the most valuable companies in the world. Facebook's got over 50 acquisitions under its belt. Google's got 180 businesses that they've acquired under their belt. And so we kind of get it as a big company thing, and we sort of assume that it needs lots of lawyers and accountants and that sort of stuff. But actually, the smartest people or the most successful entrepreneurs I know are just, if you need clients in your business, then acquiring a company that's already got your clients is a very successful way to grow the business. If you need great staff, so a lot of companies are acquiring smaller businesses just for the purpose of getting their staff. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a very effective path to growth that I guess a lot of entrepreneurs just don't think about because it's not sort of commonly talked about.
Thanks for expanding on that. We're now at the part of the show where you share 3 golden nuggets with us. So, Callum, what is your favourite quote and how have you applied it?
I don't really have a favourite quote. I think quotes tend to jump out at me at different times based on sort of where I am in various business cycles or what I'm trying to wrestle with at any given time. We have a I guess a phrase within the key person of influence training, which is all around getting stuff done for the purposes of this podcast, GSD. And it's just a reminder that just to focus on getting output into the market, because it's very easy to sit around and kind of think either that you've got the greatest idea ever, or sit around and think, the business is lousy, but actually the only thing that matters is what the market says. So, we definitely have a bias to get stuff done. So that definitely drives me on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I think you just said another one actually there. You didn't realise that the only thing that matters is what the market says. That's a good one.
Yeah, sure enough.
Do you have any favourite online resources that you could share with us?
I lived most of my life using one tool or another. I was lucky enough to have an advisor in my company who's the former head of mobile for Google Asia. And I always used to say to him, like, whenever you see Sergey or Bryn, can you just thank them for like the amazing tools that I use every day, pretty much for free. It's one of those interesting things when you kind of grow up with it. It's very easy to take for granted the amount of quality tools that we can just access completely for free. I'm a big Google fanboy. I kind of all my businesses are run on Google Docs, and while I am working hard to extract myself from handling any email, it's obviously a key part of my business. And then I guess the other one is platforms that allow me to outsource work. So I put a huge amount of business through Elance over the years, which is now been absorbed into Upwork. If I'm running new projects or new products, I often look to outsourcing platforms to bring them to fruition quicker.
Mm-hmm. And what is your best advice to other entrepreneurs?
Don't do it. Quit. Run away. It's kind of what I've been saying all along, which is find good people to be around. It makes such a huge difference. I think if you've got the right people around you, 99% of the problems disappear. And so I think one of the useful bits of advice I was given years ago was to ask more who questions. So as an entrepreneur, when you come up with a problem, that problem might be, how do I get more clients? How do I expand the business without the cash flow, or whatever those questions are? We tend to go straight into trying to solve that problem, and generally we either can't solve the problem, so give up, or we don't know the answer to the problem and press ahead anyway, which isn't the brightest move. And what I was told was to focus more on asking who questions. So who already knows the answer to this question? Who would stand to benefit if I was successful at this? Who could mentor me through this period of time? And so by asking that, it just kind of allows you to have there's always somebody that can give you a bit of direction, a bit of steer, and hopefully get you past that sticking point.
Okay. Everyone, if you didn't manage to get a note of Callum's favourite resource or his favourite books, then you can find the links on Callum's show notes page. Just go to theentrepreneurway.com and search for Callum or Callum Laing in the search box. Callum, is there anything else that you'd like to add about your business?
Not only if you're looking at business, I would urge you to think globally from day one. Mm-hmm. There are huge opportunities out here in Asia. We'd love to talk to you. If you're a successful business, so if you're kind of already at the point where you're doing $1 million or 2 million and above, then there's some very creative opportunities to join groups of other companies and list those groups, and I'd love to talk to you if you're in that space.
Okay. Callum, it's been an honour having you on the show, and thank you for sharing your vast knowledge with us. It's been really enlightening, and you've given us some great insight into what it takes to be an entrepreneur, so thank you very much.
I hope I haven't put too many people off.
I don't think you have. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to The Entrepreneur Way. Subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Twitter @Neil D. Ball.